Protection and control. It's all you hear when you first start in the electrical industry. What does it mean? Electrical protection and control. Well, the Canadian Electrical Code breaks down protection and control really simply in one section. It's called Section 14. The National Electrical Code does have protection and control over a bunch of different articles, over 110, 300, 404, 409, 430, etc. I will show you a chart later on where I'm comparing the Canadian Electrical Code and the National Electrical Code equivalent. But let's use the Canadian Electrical Code just because it happens to be broken up in, it happens to be together in one section called Section 14, Protection and Control. So let's do, this is a flow chart that I've made of Section 14, Protection and Control from Canadian Electrical Code, but what it means is the same in all of North America. When we talk about protection and control in electrical systems, we're talking about really, I know I talk about safety a lot, but we're talking about the heart and the important part of electrical safety. First, protection. So protection sits in rules 14, the 100s, 200s, and 300s of rules 14 in the Canadian Electrical Code. It's in Article 240 of the National Electrical Code called Overcurrent Protection. And what protection means is what protection actually uses to do the protection are fuses and circuit breakers. Fuses are in 14200, circuit breakers are in 14300s of the Canadian Electrical Code. Fuses are in Article 240, and circuit breakers are in Article also 240 of the National Electrical Code. So what does this mean, protection? What does this mean? Protection means keeping people and equipment safe from any faults. You know, the faults that come from overcurrent and short circuits that cause hazardous conditions, unsafe conditions, arcing, fire, etc. But how does that differ from control then? Control, to control means being able to direct how that electricity flows. Control is in 14400s to 14600s of the Canadian Electrical Code. It's in Article 404, 430, and 409, and a couple other ones in the National Electrical Code. But basically, control, protection means we're keeping you safe from faults, and control means we're able to direct how electricity flows, starting, stopping, and isolating circuits safely when we need to isolate them. Together, protection and control make us be able to work safely and predictably. For example, every switch, fuse, and circuit breaker in your home or something as big as a substation exists for one of these two purposes, protection or control. Without proper protection and control, even a well-designed system can become dangerous. That's why the code dictates an entire section, Section 14 in the Canadian Electrical Code, to this. In the National Electrical Code, it's also prevalent across that code in general. So let's look at this National Code equivalent and the Canadian Electrical Code equivalent of protection and control. Let's talk about protection. This part, protection. In the rules 14, 100, 200s, and 300s of Canadian Electrical Code, Article 240 of the National Electrical Code, or 490 for equipment over 600 volts. Let's talk about that. This protection section, it's about stopping that flow of electricity before it causes any damage or hurt. In the code, that means using fuses and circuit breakers, which are devices intended to interrupt your current, of course, when something goes wrong. The fuses are going to melt once the current exceeds their rating. Circuit breakers are going to trip mechanically and can be reset. these sections of code also say how these need to be labeled so that people can reset them properly. And both of these, fuses and circuit breakers, serve the same purpose: to prevent overheating, fire, equipment failure for safety. As an example, what if a motor seizes or a cable shorts? The protection affords us a protective device that will limit the fault currents and isolate that problem instantly from the rest of the system. Protection is like a backup for your electrical system, but you hope you never need it. But you do depend on it every second that that power is on. Now let's talk about control. Control in the Canadian Electrical Code is 400s to 600s, switches, miscellaneous apparatus, and solid state devices. In the National Electrical Code, it's over a couple articles, 404, 409, 430, 445, and 430, but it's the same thing. It controls how we tell electricity when and where that electricity should go. That's what control is. This includes switches, receptacles, panel boards, even remote control circuits, remotely controlled circuits. Everything that allows us to safely connect or disconnect power. In modern systems, down here, it even includes solid state devices, which are separated in the Canadian Electrical Code, which is into Rule 14700. These solid state devices like dimmers, variable speed drives, and uninterrupted power supplies, UPSs, that manage energy electronically are also covered in the control section and very important. So as an example for control, if you're thinking about turning off a lighting circuit or starting a motor remotely or keeping a computer running during an outage, those are all examples of controls. Control keeps the system usable and reliable, just as protection kept the system keeps you safe by blocking off current when it needs to block off the current. Together, protection and control definitely form the foundation of every electrical installation in terms of keeping us safe, and that's what our code is all about.